All right, going to read chapter 10. Okay, so when I last read, Papa had been brought in, and Stacy told the kids that Papa was going to be okay. Chapter 10. How's it look? Asked Papa as I passed through the sitting room on my way out the side door. Over a week had passed since he'd been injured, and this was his first morning up. He was seated by the coal fireplace, his head still bandaged, his leg resting on a wooden chair. His eyes were on Mama at her desk. Mama put down her pencil and frowned at the open ledger before her. She glanced at me absently and waited until I had closed the screen door behind me. Then she said, "David, do you think we should go into this now? You're still not well." "I'm well enough to know there ain't much left. Now tell me." I hopped down the steps and sat on the bottom one. Mama was silent a moment before she answered him. "With Hammer's half of the mortgage money, we've got enough to meet the June payment." "Nothing more?" "A couple of dollars, but that's all." They were both silent. "You think we should write Hammer and borrow some money?" Mama asked. Papa didn't answer right away. "No," he said finally. "I still don't want him to know about this thing. If he knows I'm not on the railroad, he'll want to know why not, and I don't want to risk that temper of his when he finds out what the Wallaces done." Mama sighed. "I guess you're right." "I know I am," said Papa. "Things like they are, he'll come down here wild and angry. He'll get himself hung. Long as things don't get no worse, we can make it without him. We'll meet that June note with the money we got there." He paused a moment. "We'll probably have to sell a couple of cows and their calves to make the July and August notes, maybe even that old sow, but by the end of August, we should have enough cotton to make that September payment. Of course, we'll probably have to go all the way to Vicksburg to get a gin. Can't hardly ask Harlan Granger to use his gin this year." There was silence again. Then Mama said, "David, Mama's been talking about going into Strawberry to the market next." "No," Papa said. "Too much bad feelings there." I told her that. "I'll talk to her. Anything else we got to have before the first cotton comes?" "Well, you picked up batteries and kerosene on that last trip, but we're going to need more than anything is insecticide to spray on the cotton. The bugs are getting really bad." "What about food?" "Our flour and sugar and baking powder and such are low, but we'll make do. We don't have to have biscuits and cornbread every day. We're out of pepper and there's not much salt, but we don't have to have that either. And the coffee's all gone. The garden's coming along nicely, though. There's no worry there." "No worry," Papa muttered as both of them grew quiet. Then suddenly there was a sharp explosion as though something had been struck with angry force. "If only this leg wasn't busted." "Don't let Stacy hear you saying that, David," Mama cautioned softly. "You know he blames himself about your leg. I told that boy it wasn't his fault. He just wasn't strong enough to hold Jack." "I know that, but still he blames himself." Papa laughed strangely. "Ain't this something? Them Wallaces aim a gun at my head and I get my leg broke and my boy's blaming himself for it. Why, I feel like taking a bullwhip to all three of them Wallaces and not stopping till my arm gets so tired I can't raise it one more time." "You're sounding like Hammer." "Am I? Well, a lot of times I feel like doing things Hammer's way. I think I'd get a powerful lot of satisfaction from whipping Caleb Wallace and them brothers of his." "Hammer's way would get you killed, and you know it, so stop talking like that." "Don't we already have enough to worry about? Besides, both Thurston and Dewberry Wallace are still laid up, so I hear. Some folks even say Dewberry's back is broken. In any case, Mr. Morrison must have hurt them pretty bad." "Where is he, by the way? I haven't seen him this morning." There was an instant of silence before Mama answered. "He's out looking for work again." "He ain't gonna find nothing here. I told him that." "I know," agreed Mama, "but he says he's just got to try." "David, don't you think he ought to go? I don't want him to, but after what he done to the Wallaces, I'm afraid for him." "He knows what could happen, Mary, but he wants to stay, and frankly, we need him here. Don't pester him about it." "But David, if—" Before Mama finished, I spied Mr. Morrison coming west from Smellens Creek. I left the step and hurried to meet him. Hello, Mr. Morrison, I shouted as Jack pulled the wagon up the drive. Hello, Cassie, Mr. Morrison greeted me. Your papa awake? Yes, sir. He's sitting out of bed this morning. Didn't I tell you nothing could keep him down? Yes, sir, you did. He stepped from the wagon and walked toward the house. Mr. Morrison, you want me to unhitch Jack for you? No, Cassie, leave him be. I gotta talk to your papa and then I'll be back. Hey, old Jack, I said, patting the mule as I watched Mr. Morrison enter the side door. I thought of returning to my seat on the steps, but decided against it. Instead, I remained with Jack, thoughtfully digesting all I'd heard, until Mr. Morrison came from the house. He went into the barn, then reappeared with a planter, a plow-like tool with a small round container for dropping seeds attached to its middle. He put the planter on the back of the wagon. Where are you going now, Mr. Morrison? Down to Mr. Wiggins' place. I seen Mr. Wiggins this morning, and he asked to use your papa's planter. He ain't got no wagon, so I told him I'd ask your papa, and if it was all right, I'd bring it to him. Ain't it kind of late for seeding? Well, not for what he's got in mind. He thought he'd plant himself some summer corn. It'll be ready come September. Mr. Morrison, can I go with you? I asked as he climbed up on the wagon. Well, I'd be right pleased for your company, Cassie, but you'll have to ask your mama. I ran back to the house. The boys were now in Mama and Papa's room when I asked if I could go to Little Willie's with Mr. Morrison. Little man Christopher John, of course, wanted to go too. Mr. Morrison said it'd be all right, Mama. Well, don't you go getting in his way. Stacy, are you going? Stacy sat across from Papa, looking despondently at the broken leg. Go on, son, said Papa. There's nothing for you to do here. Give you a chance to talk to Little Willie. You sure there ain't nothing I can do for you, Papa? Just go and have yourself a good old ride over to Little Willie's. Since it had been my idea to go, I claimed the seat beside Mr. Morrison, and the boys climbed in the back. Little Willie's family lived on their farm. Lived on their own 40 acres about 2 miles east of Great Faith. It was a fine morning for a ride, and the 6 miles there sped by quickly, with Mr. Morrison singing in his basset of bass voices and Christopher John, Little Man, and me joining in whenever we could as we passed cotton fields of bloom and flowers of white and red and pink. Stacy being in one of his moods, didn't sing, and we let him be. We stayed less than an hour at the Wiggins farm, then headed back home again. We had just passed Great Faith and were approaching the Jefferson Davis School Road when a ragged pickup came into view. Very quietly, Mr. Morrison said, Cassie, get in the back. But why, Mr. Do quick, Cassie, like I say. His voice was barely above a friendly whisper, but there was an urgency in it that I obeyed. I scrambled over the seat and joined the boys. Y'all stay down now. The truck braked noisily with a grating shriek of steel. We stopped. The boys and I peeked over the edge of the wagon. The truck had veered across the road, blocking us. The truck door swung open and Caleb Wallace stepped out, pointing a long, condemning finger at Mr. Morrison. He swayed, unspeaking, for a long, terrible moment, and then sputtered, You big black N-word, I oughta cut out your throat for what you done. My brother laid up like they is, and you're still running around free as a white man. Downright simple, that's what it is. Why I oughta gun you down where you sit. You gonna move your truck? Caleb Wallace gazed at Mr. Morrison, then at the truck, as if trying to comprehend the connection between the two. That truck in your way, boy? You're gonna move it? I'll move it, all right, when I get good and ready. He stopped abruptly, his eyes bulging in a terrified stare as Mr. Morrison climbed down from the wagon. Mr. Morrison's long shadow fell over him, and for a breathless second, Mr. Morrison towered dangerously near him. But as the fear grew white on Caleb Wallace's face, Mr. Morrison turned without a word and peered into the truck. What's he looking for? I whispered. Probably a gun, said Stacy. Mr. Morrison circled the truck, studying it closely, then he returned to its front. Bending at the knees with his back against the grill, he positioned his large hands beneath the bumper. Slowly, his muscles flexing tightly against his thin shirt, and the sweat popping off his skin like olive oil on water, he lifted the truck in one fluid, powerful motion until the front was several inches off the ground, and slowly walked it to the left of the road, where he set it down as gently as a sleeping child. Then he moved to the rear of the truck and repeated the feat. Caleb Wallace was mute. Christopher John Littleman and I stared open-mouthed, and even Stacy, who had witnessed Mr. Morrison's phenomenal strength before, gazed in wonder. It took Caleb Wallace several minutes to regain his voice. We were far down the road, almost out of hearing, when his frenzied cry of hate reached us. "One of these nights, you watch, I'm gonna come get you for what you done. You just watch. One night real soon." When we reached home and told Mama and Papa and Big Ma what had happened, Mama said to Mr. Morrison, "I told you before I was afraid for you, and today Caleb Wallace could have hurt you and the children." Mr. Morrison looked squarely into Mama's eyes. "Miss Logan, Caleb Wallace is one of those folks who can't do nothing by himself. He got to have a lot of other folks backing him up, plus a loaded gun. And I knew there wasn't a gun, leastways not in the truck. I checked." "But if you stay, he'll get somebody and they'll try to take you, like he said." "Miss Logan, don't ask me to go." Mama reached out, laying a slender hand on Mr. Morrison's. "Mr. Morrison, you're part of us now. I don't want you hurt because of us." Mr. Morrison lowered his eyes and looked around the room until his gaze rested on the boys and me. "I ain't never had no children of my own. I think sometimes if I had, I'd have wanted a son and daughter just like you and Mr. Logan, and grandbabies like these babies of yours." "But Mr. Morrison, the Wallaces—" "Mary," said Papa quietly, "let it be." Mama looked at Papa, her lips still poised to speak. Then she said no more, but the worry lines remained creased upon her brow. August dawned, blue and hot. The heat swooped low over the land, clinging like an invisible shroud. And through it, people moved slowly, lethargically, as if underwater. In the ripening fields, drying cotton and corn stretched tiredly skyward above the coolness of the rain that occasionally threatened, but did not come. And the land took on a baked brown look. To escape the heat, the boys and I often ambled into the coolness of the forest after the chores were done. There, while the cows and their calves grazed nearby, we sat on the banks of the pond, our backs propped against the old hickory, a pine, a walnut, our feet dangling lazily in the cool water, and waited for a watermelon brought from the garden to chill. Sometimes Jeremy joined us there, making his way through the deep forest land from his own farm a mile away. But the meetings were never planned. None of our parents would have liked that. "How's your papa?" he asked one day as he plopped down beside us. "He's all right," said Stacy, "except his legs bothering him in this heat, itching a lot. But Mama says it's a sign it's getting well." "That's good," murmured Jeremy. "Too bad he had to get hurt when he done, so he couldn't go back to the railroad." Stacy stirred uneasily, looked at Christopher John Littleman and me, reminding us with his eyes that we were not to speak about the Wallace's part in Papa's injury, and said only, "Uh-huh." Jeremy was silent a moment, then stuttered, "Some folks saying they glad he got hurt. Glad he can't get the railroad money." "Who said that?" I cried, jumping up from the bank. "Just tell me who said it, and I'll ram—" "Cassie, sit down and be quiet," Stacy ordered. Reluctantly, I did as I was told, wishing that this business about the Wallaces and Papa's injuries were not so complex. It seemed to me that since the Wallaces attacked Papa and Mr. Morrison, the simplest thing to be would have the sheriff put them in jail. But Mama said things don't work that way. She explained that as long as the Wallaces, embarrassed by their injuries at the hands of Mr. Morrison, did not make an official complaint about the incident, then we must remain silent also. If we did not, Mr. Morrison could be charged with attacking white men, which could possibly end in his being sentenced to the chain gang, or worse. I ain't the one that said it, Cassie," stammered Jeremy by way of apology. "Well, whoever's saying it ought not be," I said huffily. Jeremy nodded thoughtfully and changed the subject. Y'all seen TJ lately? Stacy frowned, considering whether or not he should answer. There'd been much talk concerning TJ and the Simps brothers, all of it bad. Mo Turner's father had told Papa that TJ had stopped by with the Simpsons once, and after they left, he discovered his watch missing. The Laniers had had the same experience with the locket. That TJ done turned real bad, Mr. Lanier had said, and I don't want nothing to do with no thief, especially no thief running around with white boys. Finally, Stacy said, we don't see him much anymore. Jeremy pulled at his lip. I see him all the time. Too bad, I sympathized. Stacy glanced reproachfully at me, then lay flat upon the ground, his head resting in the cushion of his hand clasped under his head. Sure is beautiful up there, he said pointedly, changing the subject again. The rest of us lay down too. Overhead, the branches of the walnut and hickory trees met like long green fans sheltering us. Several feet away, the persistent sun made amber roads of shimmering sunlight upon the pond. A stillness hovered in the high air, soft, quiet, peaceful. I think when I grow up, I'm going to build me a house and some trees and just live there all the time, said Jeremy. How you going to do that? Asked Little Man. Oh, I'll find me some real strong trees and just build. I figure I'll have the trunk of one of these trees, the bedroom, and the other in the kitchen. How come you want to live in a tree for? Christopher John inquired. It's so peaceful up there and quiet, cool too, Jeremy said, especially at night. How you know how cool it is at night? I said. Jeremy's face brightened because I got my bedroom up there. We looked at him unbelieving. I do, I really do. I built it myself and I sleeps up there. Come nights like these, hot, I just climbs in my tree like it's going into another world. Why, I can see and hear things there I bet you only the squirrels and birds can see and hear. Sometimes I think I can see all the way over here to y'all's place. Aw, shoot, boy, you're a story, I said. You're a place too far away and you know it. Well, Jeremy's face dropped. Well, maybe I can't see it, but that don't keep me from pretending I do. He was silent a second, then hopped up suddenly, his face bright again. Hey, why don't y'all come on over and see it? My pa's gonna be gone all day and there'll be lots of fun and I can show y'all. No, said Stacy quietly, his eyes still on the trees overhead. Jeremy sat back down, deflated. Just wanted y'all to see it, that's all. For a while he looked hurt by Stacy's cold refusal. Then, seeming to accept it as a part of the way things were, he again took up his position and volunteered good-naturedly. If y'all ever get the chance to build yourselves a tree house, just let me know and I'll help you. It's just as cool. Papa sat on a bench in the barn, his broken legs stretched awkwardly before him, mending one of Jack's harnesses. He'd been there since early morning, a frown line carved deep into his forehead, quietly mending those things which needed mending. Mama told us not to bother him, so we stayed away from the barn as long as we could, but by late afternoon we drifted naturally to it and began our chores. Papa had disappeared within himself, and he took no notice of us at first, but shortly afterward he looked up, watching us closely. When the chores were almost finished, Mr. Morrison arrived from Strawberry, where he had gone to make the August mortgage payment. He entered the barn slowly and handed Papa an envelope. Papa glanced up questioningly, then ripped it open. As he read the letter, his jaw set tightly, and when he finished, he smashed his fist so hard against the bench that the boys and I stopped what we were doing, aware that something was terribly wrong. Did they tell you? He asked of Mr. Morrison, his voice curt, angry. Mr. Morrison nodded. I tried to get him to wait until after cotton picking, but they told me it was due and payable immediately. Them's they words. So what's due and payable immediately is the entire loan that they took, rather than allowing the mortgage to go through for however many more years or months they still had. The bank is saying you pay it now or you lose it. Mr. Morrison nodded. Oh, Harlan Granger, Papa said. He reached for his cane and stood up. You feel like going to Strawberry tonight? I can make it, but I don't know if that old mule can. Then hitch Lady up, he said, motioning on to the mare. He turned then and went into the house. The boys and I followed, not quite sure of what was happening. Papa entered the kitchen. We stayed on the porch, peering through the screen. David, is something the matter, son? The bank called up the note. I'm going to Strawberry. Called up the note? Echoed Big Ma. Oh, Lord, not that too. Mama stared at Papa, fear in her eyes. You're going now? Now, he said, leaving the kitchen for their room. Mama's voice trailed him. David, it's too late. The bank's closed. You can't see anyone until morning. We couldn't hear Papa's reply, but Mama's voice rose sharply. You want to be out there on the road again in the middle of the night after what happened? You want us worried to death about you? Mary, don't you understand they're trying to take this land? Don't you understand I don't want you dead? We could hear nothing else. But a few minutes later, Papa came out and told Mr. Morrison to unhitch Lady. They would go to Strawberry in the morning. The next day, Papa and Mr. Morrison were gone before I rose. When they returned in the late afternoon, Papa sat wearily down at the kitchen, where Mr. Morrison sat beside him, rubbing his hand over his thick hair. He said, I called Hammer. What'd you tell him? Mama asked. Just that the note's been called. He said he'd get the money. How? He didn't say, and I didn't ask. He just said he'd get it. And Mr. Higgins at the bank, David? Said Big Mom. What did he have to say? He said our credit's no good anymore. We aren't even hurting the Wallaces now, Mama said with acid anger. Holland Granger's got no need. Oh, baby, you know he's got a need. He's got a need to show us where we stand in the scheme of things. He's got a powerful need to do that. Besides, he still wants this place. But, son, that mortgage gave us another 4 more years. Papa laughed dryly. Mama, you want me to take it to court? Big Ma sighed and placed her hand on Papa's. What if Hammer can't get the money? Papa didn't look at her, but at Mr. Morrison instead. Don't worry, Mama. We ain't gonna lose this land. Trust me. On the third Sunday of August, the annual revival began. Revivals were always very serious, yet happy and long planned for, affairs which brought pots and pans from out-of-the-way shelves, mothball-packed dresses and creased pants from hidden chests, and all the people from the community and the neighboring communities up the winding red school road to Great Faith Church. The revival ran for 7 days, and it was an occasion everyone looked forward to, for it was more than just church services. It was the year's only planned social event, disrupting the humdrum of everyday country life. Teenagers courted openly, adults met with relatives and friends they'd not seen since the previous year's big meeting, and children ran almost free. As far as I was concerned, the best part of the revival was the very first day. After the first of 3 church services was dismissed, the mass of humanity, which had squished its way into the sheltering interior of the small church sweltering, poured onto the school grounds, and the women proudly set out their dinners in the backs of wagons and on the long tables circling the church. Then it was a feast to remember. Brimming bowls of turnip greens and black-eyed peas with ham hocks, thick slices of last winter's sugar-cured ham and strips of boiled rib, crispy fried chicken, and hard times were forgotten, at least for the day. The boys and I had just loaded our plates for the first time and taken our seat under an old walnut when Stacy put down his plate and stood up again. What's the matter? I asked. Stacy frowned into the sun. That man walking up the road. I took a moment to look up, then picked up my drumstick. So, he looks like Uncle Hammer, he cried and dashed away. I hesitated, watching him, reluctant to leave my plate until I knew it was really Uncle Hammer. When Stacy reached the man and hugged him, I put my plate down and ran across the road. Crispy John with his plate still in hand, and Little Man ran after me. Uncle Hammer, where's your car? Little Man asked after we had all hugged him. Sold it. Sold it, we cried in unison. But why? Asked Stacy. Needed the money, Uncle Hammer said flatly. As we neared the church, Papa met us and embraced Uncle Hammer. I wasn't expecting you to come all the way down here. You expected me to send that much money by mail? Could have wired it. Don't trust that either. How'd you get it? Borrowed some of it, sold a few things, Daddy said. Then he looked at Papa's leg. How'd you do that? Papa's eyes went to Uncle Hammer's and he smiled faintly. I was sort of hoping you wouldn't ask that. Uh-huh. Papa, I said, Uncle Hammer sold his Packard. Papa's smile faded. I didn't mean for that to happen, Hammer. Uncle Hammer put his arm around Papa. What good's a car? You can't grow cotton, you can't build a home on it, and you sure can't raise 4 babies in it. Papa nodded, understanding. Now you gonna tell me about that leg? Papa stared at the smiling throng of people around the dinner tables. Let's get you something to eat first, he said. Then I'll tell you. Maybe it'll sit better on a full stomach. Because Uncle Hammer was leaving early Monday morning, the boys and I were allowed to stay up much later than usual to be with him. Long hours after we should have been in bed, we sat on the front porch, lit only by the whiteness of the full moon, and listened to the comforting sounds of Papa's and Uncle Hammer's voices mingling once again. We'll go up to Strawberry and make that payment first thing in the morning, said Papa. I don't think I'd better go all the way to Vicksburg with this leg, but Mr. Morrison will take you there. See you to the train. He don't have to do that, replied Uncle Hammer. I can make it to Vicksburg all right. I'd rest easier if I knew you was on that train headed due north, not off getting yourself ready to do something foolish. Uncle Hammer grunted. There ain't a thing foolish about what I'd like to do to them Wallaces. There was nothing to say to how he felt. No one tried. But what do you plan to do for money? Uncle Hammer asked after a while. The cotton's looking good, said Papa. We'll do well on it. They'll make out all right. Uncle Hammer was quiet a moment before he observed, just gonna tighten the belt a little, huh? Papa didn't answer. Uncle Hammer said, maybe I better stay. Nope, said Papa. You're better off in Chicago. May do better, but I worry a lot. Come through Strawberry with the fella from Vicksburg. Things seem worse than usual up there. It gets hot like this, and folks get dissatisfied with life. They start looking around for somebody to take it out on. I don't want it to be you. I don't think it will be, said Papa, unless you stay. In the morning, after the men had gone, Big Ma said to Mama, I sure wish Hammer could have stayed longer. It's better he went, said Mama. Big Ma nodded. I know, things like they are. It don't take a little bit of nothing to set things off, and Hammer, with that temper he got, could do it. Still, she murmured wistfully, I sure wish he could have stayed. On the last night of the revival, the sky took on a strange yellow cast. The air felt close, suffocating, and no wind stirred. What do you think, David? Mom said. You think we should go? Papa leaned against his cane. It's going to storm, all right, but it may not come till late on over into the night. They decided we would go. Most other families had come to the same decision, for the church grounds were crowded with wagons when we arrived. Brother Logan, one of the deacons called as Papa stepped awkwardly down from the wagon. Reverend Gabson wants to get the meeting started as soon as we can so we can dismiss early and get on home before the storm hits. All right, said Papa, directing us toward the church. But as we neared the building, we were stopped by the Laniers. As the grown-ups talked, little Willie Wiggins and Mo Turner, standing with several other boys, motioned to Stacy from the road. Stacy wandered away to speak to them. Christopher John, Little Man, and I went too. Guess who we seen? Said Little Willie as Stacy walked up. But before Stacy could venture a guess, Little Willie answered his own question. TJ, with them Simses. Where? Asked Stacy. Over there, Little Willie pointed. They parked by the classrooms. Look, here they come. All eyes followed the direction of Little Willie's finger. Through the setting dust, 3 figures ambled with assurance across the wide lawn. The 2 Simses on the outside, TJ in the middle. How come he bringing them here? Asked Mo Turner angrily. Stacy shrugged. Don't know, but I guess we'll find out. He looks different, I remarked when I could see TJ more distinctly. He was dressed in a pair of long, unpatched trousers, and as sticky hot as it was, he wore a suit coat and a tie, and a hat cocked jauntily to one side. I suppose he do look different, murmured Mo bitterly. I'd look different too if I'd been busy stealing other folks' stuff. Well, what we got here? Exclaimed TJ loudly as he approached. Y'all gonna welcome us to y'all's revival services? What you doing here, TJ? Stacy asked. TJ laughed. I got a right to come to my own church, ain't I? See all my old friends. His eyes wandered over the group, but no one showed signs of being glad to see him. His wide grin shrank a little. Then, spying me, he patted my face with his moist hand. Hey, Cassie girl, how you doing? I slapped his hand away. Don't you come messing with me, TJ, I warned. Again, he laughed. Then he said soberly, well, this is a fine how do you do. I come all the way over here to introduce my friends, RW and Melvin, to y'all, and y'all acting like y'all ain't got no manners at all. Yeah, all RW and Melvin, he said, rolling the Sims's name slowly off his tongue to bring to our attention that he had not bothered to place the Mr. before either. They've been mighty fine friends to me, better than any of y'all. Look, see here what they give me. Proudly he tugged at the suit coat. Pretty nice stuff, eh? Everything I want they give me, 'cause they really likes me. I'm their best friend. He turned to the Simses. Ain't that right, R.W. and Melvin? Melvin nodded, a condescending smirk on his face which was lost on TJ. Anything, just anything at all I want, they'll get it for me, including what? He hesitated as if he were unsure whether or not he was going too far, then plunged on. Including that pearl-handled pistol in Barnett's Mercantile. R.W. stepped forward and slapped a reassuring hand on TJ's shoulder. That's right, TJ. You name it, you got it. TJ grinned widely. Stacy turned away in disgust. Come on, he said, service about to start. Hey, what's the matter with y'all? TJ yelled as the group turned en masse and headed for the church. I glanced back at him. Was he really such a fool? All right, TJ, said Melvin as we walked away. We come down here like you asked. Now you come on to Strawberry with us, like you promised. It didn't even make no difference, muttered TJ. What? Asked R.W. You coming, ain't you? You still want that pearl-handled pistol, don't you? Yeah, but then come on, he ordered, turning with Melvin and heading for the pickup. But TJ didn't follow immediately. He remained standing in the middle of the compound, his face puzzled and undecided. I had never seen him look more desolately alone, and for a fleeting second I felt almost sorry for him. When I reached the church steps, I looked back again. TJ was still there, an indistinct blur blending into the gathering dusk, and I began to think that perhaps he would not go with the Simses. But then the rude squawk of the truck's horn blasted the quiet evening, and TJ turned his back on us and fled across the field. That is the end of chapter 10. Lots of foreshadowing. They're going to Strawberry. They're going to get a gun. It doesn't sound like they pay for the things that they get. It sounds like TJ might be in a world of trouble. But we'll have to see what happens after break.